See, a lot of people believe since Greg Newsome is a little upset about him playing slot corner, all of a sudden it's time for Madden Trade Machine. Maybe we can get Greg Newsome for Deion Sanders and Willie Wonka in his prime. No. Jeff and I will talk about the trade rumor out there between Greg Newsome and a really good young receiver coming up. We'll talk about whether that's fact or fiction coming up on the next episode of the Locked On Browns podcast.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. LGB on the LOB, the Locked On Browns podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Appreciate you all who make Locked On Browns your first listen every day, whether it is on your favorite podcast platform, always available, always free, of course, on YouTube. Make sure you're subscribed, notifications on, throw some likes on the episodes for you boys, help us generate that buzz. And if you got Roku, go ahead and fire it up and search Locked On Cleveland Sports. You'll find us here, Locked On Browns. You will find the ultimate Cleveland sports show. Obviously had a great spot today with Joe Thomas. You get Guards coverage. You'll get Cavaliers coverage. So make sure you're checking that all out. Your host, Jeff Lloyd, at Jeff_LJ_Lloyd. Of course, a part of the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. The on-air personality, 92.3 The Fan, Mr. Garrett Bush, the Barbershop Saturday mornings. Other appearances always from G. Bush over at The Fan, so make sure you're checking all that out. And you can make sure you're checking all that out by following at GBush91. We've got some things to get to. And look, guys, I get it. You know, we're in the off season. And, you know, everybody, you know, look, you've played Madden or, you know, you maybe won your fantasy home league against, you know, your great auntie and your nephew who's 9. But this is the NFL and things just don't work as simple as you think. And look, first things first, does Greg Newsome like playing the slot? It seems apparent that he's not a huge fan of it. Has Greg Newsome probably spent more than 30 seconds with Jim Schwartz to this point? No. Does he have any idea what Jim Schwartz's intentions are for his 3 cornerbacks to this point? No. And with that, and again, you know, the Browns have several positional areas where they are very good and deep at. They also have some that they're downright bad, downright barren. So the last thing the Cleveland Browns need to do is create another hole for themselves. The whole Jerry Jeudy thing. Now, I tried to tell you all a couple of weeks ago, part of Sean Payton going to Denver, the appeal there might not be a Russell Wilson. The appeal there could be a young wide receiver named Jerry Jeudy, who Sean Payton can look at and say, well, here's my Michael Thomas, whether or not it works out with Russell Wilson or not. And he's the cheapest wide receiver on the Broncos roster. They extended 2 wide receivers. Oh, well, they extended those wide receivers. They're not going to be able to keep Jerry Jeudy. If you actually take some time and you do a little work on Google, you'll see that the wide receivers that Denver Broncos have recently extended, guess what? The bulk of their contracts are up after 2024. Guess who would need a new contract for 2025? The same Jerry Jeudy. So, I mean, and this is the thing. And for me, and you got a lot of you guys know, I used to be very heavily involved on social media. But the problem is I get into these things and people haven't even done their homework. And that's the part that gets extremely frustrating. Oh, well, you could have a huge problem with Greg Newsome. He could sit out. He could. Okay, well, guess what? Kareem Hunt last year in August didn't practice, sat out, told everybody he wanted to be traded. Guess what? Kareem Hunt was a backup running back for the Cleveland Browns. Nobody came calling with an asking price that the Cleveland Browns seemed satisfied with. So his actions did nothing for him. So, I mean, all of this, and everything's got to be put so far out there. Look, right now, the Cleveland Browns are in a situation where they have 3 dynamic, diverse, different, all built different, all different skill sets in that cornerback room. My honest belief, and I'm sure if you ask Jim Schwartz, he would probably tell you, one of the selling points to becoming defense coordinator for the Cleveland Browns was these three cornerbacks. Obviously Myles Garrett, no doubt about it. But after that, what was the next big selling point? What was the next thing that made Jimbo Schwartz say yes? It was most likely the fact that he had three corners, all solid, with all varying skill sets, Garrett.
Yeah, anytime, Jeff, you get a new coach come in, there's always a situation where, guess what? You're gonna have people that are a little unsettled.
Where do I fit in? Where do I fit in?
Where do I go? It's the same thing. I've had it in college where, you may have been recruited by a certain coach. He was a guy who recruited you. He was a guy who found a position for you. He was high on you, and then he leaves, and then you have to go into a mix where, guess what? There's a new coach recruiting new guys coming in. He may be recruiting a different style of a player than you. He may want bigger defensive ends or smaller defensive ends or fast. Maybe they want to go from a 4-3 to a 3-4. All of those different things, you have to be, flexible. And so, yeah, Greg Newsome is going to say stuff. But at the end of the day, here's what people aren't in the business of doing, Jeff, and that's sitting out losing money. When you're in the prime of your career, right? Greg Newsome is a first-round pick. Why would Greg Newsome? Why would I let a first-round pick just walk? And why? Because
especially when I do not possess a first-round pick,
right? And when the guy came in as a third-round pick and played better, so that's a good problem to have. If you tell a corner, look, hey, listen, Greg Newsome, it's better to stay here where they know you and they like you and they actually drafted you. See, Andrew Berry drafted you. You getting traded somewhere else. You got to get acclimated to a brand new coach, a brand new head coach, and another GM that don't have no skin in the game. They ain't draft you. So why would you? I was a first overall pick, a number one pick here for this organization. You go into camp and you tell yourself, look, I'm just going to work hard and do it. And if you're you make the biggest point, if you're the Denver Broncos, why would you? I'm Sean Payton is a throwing quarterback. Sean Payton, needs receivers and running backs and all the above. And he just now went there and they got to give up all kind of draft capital to sign him. They had to give up picks to get his services. So now the first things he's going to do is create a hole for himself at receiver. Why? Because what? And make his quarterback that already struggled this year look worse for a defensive back. Stop it. It's just not. I'm sorry. And then, guys just start getting in the trade machine. Well, they could trade him Wyatt Teller. Whoa. We never said nothing about Wyatt Teller now. We got our own philosophy that we need to deal with over here. And our philosophy is we like linemen. We like running the football. We like our quarterback being upright. Why would I make another hole for myself just because we got a corner that don't want to play inside? Well, I'm sorry, dog. Hey, listen, listen, I want to be a millionaire and have a size 28 waist. It ain't working out either way for me right now, Jeff.
And look, I think everybody is taking this Greg Newsome stuff and blown it way up. And look, number one, people, you may, and you look what Greg said, obviously gave off that vibe. But you want to know what? When your team only wins 7 games, there's a lot of people that are a little upset. They ain't just so happy. Did he say anything about wanting to leave? No. Have there been trade demands? No. Is Greg Newsome a very intelligent young man who went to Northeastern University and understands, if he's viewed as an outside cornerback, his market value for next contract is exponentially higher than the contract he's currently on? Yeah. But we're not to this point yet. I mean, they've barely even met Jim Schwartz. They have no idea what Jim Schwartz's theories, philosophies, and the reason we all got to know Martin Emerson like we did in 2022 was because guys missed games and guys had to step up. And that's how we got to learn about Martin Emerson. But your Greg Newsome for Jerry Jeudy, those aren't happening, guys. They're not. And here's the other thing. As far as trading Greg Newsome, look at mock drafts. They're starting to come out from the biggest guys in the game right now. A lot of them have 5, 6 cornerbacks going round 1. So you want to trade Greg Newsome now? his value is going to be down anyway because somebody could just draft a cornerback in the first round and they have him for 5 more years, where you would only have control of Greg Newsome for only 3 more years. Guys, you gotta, I mean, I get it, but it's just not Madden. And speaking of keeping things real, we're going to get into a little financial fiction versus financial reality. Look, there are holes on the defensive side of the ball. You know it. I know it. G. Bush knows it. But how can you spend this money for the overall good of the defense? And this also kind of, for the biggest position in need on the Browns defense, this was the wrong year for this to happen for the Browns because that position financially is no longer going to be ignored during free agency. Garrett Bush, Jeff Lloyd, your latest Locked On Browns. Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. You heard me and Garrett talk about this mobile game app, and I can't tell you how much fun we had competing against our fellow Locked On NFL host. Chris Carter of Locked On Steelers was our Locked On NFL champion. Well, now it's your turn to compete, but more on that later. Ever dreamed of becoming an NFL GM and managing your football franchise? Well, your dream can come true, and this game is definitely for you. You'll manage every strategic aspect of your team, play through seasons, and lead your team to glory trying to build a dynasty. With Ultimate Football GM, you are responsible for controlling the destiny of your franchise by hiring the right coaches and coordinators, trading players, navigating your franchise through free agency and the draft, and all the ups and downs of a season. It's fun. It's addicting. It's definitely something you can do on your phone. Find a way to kill some time. You go through a season. You go through the free agent process, players retiring, all of this in a challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Football GM is completely free and playable offline. You can play on the go as you want and when you want to. We've created a Locked On League for you to compete against Locked On fans all over the world. Can you be the ultimate Locked On Football GM? Choose the Locked On League in the app to join. Can you create a football dynasty? Locked On Browns listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when they use the promo Locked On, all caps, in the game store. That's Locked On in all caps, no space. So make sure to check it out today. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up in the app stores. That's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today.
Welcome back to the Locked On Browns podcast. G. Bush at GBush91, Jeff Lloyd at Jeff_LJ_Lloyd. Let's get into a little bit of financial fact versus financial fiction, right? We talk about all the time, we kind of have to preview these, and you got a long off season. So obviously, you have to turn over every stone. Obviously, when you're doing the podcast every single day, you have to explain and thoroughly get in and out of these subjects so you can, present the most concise and overall information to give to you guys. But sometimes you just got to be real with yourself, man. When you start to see some of these names at defensive tackles, it's just not realistic. It's just not. When you look at the money you got, and you may got $25-26 million that you may have over the cap in order to go and improve your defense, or your team in general, you got to think about it like this. You still have to sign all of your rookies. You still have to go, and they'll probably bring in 6 or 7 undrafted free agents. And also, when you're dealing with free agency, you have to look at multiple positions up on the defensive line. You have to look at safety. You have to look at linebacker. You still have to look at saying, maybe we want to bring a receiver in here. And so you're going to have to be adults here. Sometimes you talk to your children, and children your children might think, money grows on trees, and you have to have a conversation about them. Like, look, we want to go on a family vacation, but here's what we got to get to, kids. This year is a little bit of a recession. Inflation is kind of high. Dad wasn't able to put in some extra hours at his second job. So we was going to go to Disney World this year, right? We might not be able to do Disney World. We might be able to do Myrtle Beach. But if we go to Myrtle Beach, we'll be able to stay an extra week instead of staying the 1 week we had at Disney World. So it's a give and take here. I know you guys were looking forward to it maybe next year, but I'm telling you what we got in the purse strings. You guys are getting older. You should be able to understand that, and hopefully you get it. And guess what? They should be like, you know what? Well, at least we're getting up out of town. I'll take Myrtle Beach, heck, and we get to stay extra 2 weeks. Maybe we get to that next year, but I'm worried about this year. That's what we're gonna have to do with Browns fans. You might not be able to get no Hargraves and no Deron Paynes and all these other high-priced D tackles. Heck, if you're gonna do that, you got to be okay with having Isaiah Thomas. You gotta be okay with Perion Winfrey playing major minutes. And then you're gonna have to start. Oh boy, what's his name? Alex Wright. You're gonna have to start him, and you might not even be able to do nothing at safety. You might have to be like, well, we might gotta move Grant Delpit around. He going to have to play out free. We got safety. Maybe we could keep the 27-year-old rookie back there. But guess what? It's some give and take. I think the reality that we're going to try to give you guys, because you guys are all adults here, is don't hold your breath for these big name free agents. Jeff, your thoughts on, that kind of concept, and do you believe that you're going to be able to bring in a big name free agent, or is that something you would look at doing, or how would you spread and allocate these resources?
Well, the way you look at it, and I think with the way you put it, as far as the actual money involved, say, the Browns have, anywhere 20-25 million to allocate for upgrades on the defensive side of the ball. First things first, you got to keep in mind Anthony Walker, Sione Takitaki, Deion Jones, Reggie Ragland. These are all guys that currently don't have contracts. So if you want to bring back any veteran linebacker presence, there's one guy who's going to have to get some money. And this is where the league and the way the ebbs and flows go. The last few years, defensive tackles have been kind of ignored in free agency. They haven't been cashing in. That is not going to be the case this year. Hargraves, fantastic player. Deron Payne, fantastic player. So if the Browns have, say, maybe $20-25 million to allocate to upgrade their defense, you're going to drop $18 million, Deron Payne, $18 million on Deron Hargraves. So then guess what? Like G said, you're talking your number 2 and number 3 defensive ends are Alex Wright and Isaiah Thomas. I'm not saying the young kids aren't capable of taking that next step, but if you're a franchise, you're not going to bank on 2 guys taking that step in year 1 or year 2. I mean, the reality is Alex Wright was drafted, I think, 76 overall. You knew he was a little bit, I don't want to say a project, but he was going to need a little work, was not playing, top-tier competition at UAB. Isaiah Thomas was drafted in the 7th round. I think he found a nice rotational piece that could be a part of this defense for a while. Few seasons in Isaiah Thomas. But to expect him to, jump in and all of a sudden be a double-digit sack guy, it's delusional. And again, we have not even spoken about the free safety position, where it seems that the Cleveland Browns and John Johnson III, it seems most likely that they are going to part ways. And, again, this is another one, this is, everybody wants to put everything on the players. Every now and then, franchises got to face themselves. Whatever their plans were for John Johnson III, they never truly let John Johnson III play here like he did with the Rams, which warranted him getting the contract that he did from the Browns. He never got to just kind of be all over the place and be the afterthought guy while you're worried about other guys. They tried to make him basically an on-the-roof safety, which he is not, and basically took him out of what made him the player that he was. So the thought process is, if you take that 20 to 25 million and you allocate 18, and you got to keep in mind, it's interior defensive line play. These guys get subbed in and out more than any other position on the field. So we're going to allocate $18 million there, which means you're going bargain basement at your other defensive end position. You're going bargain basement at free safety, or you're relying on a guy you drafted at 42 or 98 to be big-time role players. It doesn't seem feasible, in my opinion. Now, do you take this up and say, okay, I can go 6 to 8 on one defensive tackle. I can go 6 to 8 on an edge. I can go maybe 7 to 9 on a free safety if the guy I feel is there. That's a different story. That's a whole different ballgame. But for me to go throw 18 million on Deron Payne and understand, he's going to take a lot of plays off just because it's one of the most physically demanding positions in the entire NFL. It's just not cost feasible. So yeah, these are great names, and I don't know how or where you guys think the Browns are going. The Browns are going to be okay cap wise, But I think everybody just thinks that all of a sudden it's going to turn around and the Browns are going to have an extra $70 million to spend. That ain't going to be the case. And this all started with the re-signing of Jack Conklin, which I'm more than okay with. But once you re-sign Jack Conklin, that was one more player off the free agent market you were not going to get. So, look, I mean, I'm all for it. And, I understand the upgrades that are needed. But this time of year, it gets a little, we got a little lunacy. You know what I'm saying? We get, you know what I'm saying? There is a cap in this league. There is. If you manage it correctly, you should still have plenty of money to spend on quality players. But the Browns already have a bunch of quality players. And for some guys, the numbers are just continuing to go up and up and up. You got to be smart. You got to be feasible with the money you're spending. To go out and spend $19 million on one defensive tackle, just bad business, in my opinion. We're going to switch it up here. And I've done a lot of talk here so far. I've touched a lot on this draft class. I've talked a lot on moves the Browns are going to need to make. And when I talk about the running back room, the amount of people I get, whether it's in YouTube comments or on social media, the Browns are fine at running back. Well, I'm going to give you a couple thoughts to maybe dispel that myth here as G. Bush and I continue here on your latest Locked On Browns. The midway point of the NBA season is here, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores and threes drained. You want to put together a parlay. I love the parlays. You can pick 5-6 long shot bets, maybe throw $5 on it. There's only one game in your area that night, so you're heavily invested. Why not have some fun with it? So you go ahead, check out a same game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Welcome back to the Locked On Browns podcast. Thank you, everybody out there. Make sure you continue to support us on YouTube. Hit the notification bell and make sure all notifications are on so you know when we drop our videos. As always, follow us at Locked On Browns on Twitter so you can know when we definitely update as well. We link all of our shows in that forum, so make sure you check out Locked On Browns podcast on Twitter. Jeff, one of the things that is always being thrown around is because you do have a good position. You're already at a position of strength on the Browns. There's a lot of times where we always say we don't need that person, right? You got two great guards in the interior, and you got two guys that have made the Pro Bowl. All of a sudden, get rid of Wyatt Teller. We don't need him. You got a guy like Nick Chubb back there, and he's a prolific running back, 1,500 yards, one of the best running backs in the league, if not the best. First thing, one of the things you always hear, well, we had Kareem Hunt, we got, Jerome Ford, we had Dearness Johnson. We don't need any of those guys. Actually, it's not truthful. When you're a football team, you're trying to find somebody at all times. You're trying to look for the best at each position at all times, because Kareem Hunt's not going to be back on this team. Dearness Johnson's not going to be back on this team. You then left with a guy like Jerome Ford, who does not have much experience. If he goes down with a hamstring in the offseason, then what? If God forbid Nick Chubb, who's had a history of knee injuries, gets hurt or needs days off, practices off, what happens to your run game? So when we look at it, just so happens for us, this is a very deep running back class. And by the way, we'll probably talk to you about this as this goes on. A lot of your prognosticators say this is a not really deep draft when it comes to overall talent. Generally speaking, you're dealing with 120 guys that you could give grades on, who you say, hey, I like these guys. I'm giving them a 1 through 5 grade. Right now, they may have 80 guys who they could put a grade on that they're comfortable drafting, right? So you're going to have a wild variety of a range of, people that may like people that you may have a good grade on, but other people may not have them be draftable. You might have a high grade on somebody, and somebody else be like, I don't think he really fits what we're trying to do. So when that happens, you're going to have guys at running back positions and positions at receiver, tight end, where maybe you don't have a high grade or somebody else doesn't have a high grade on them, and you may be able to get a running back that you thought was going to be a second-round talent, third-round talent in the fifth, sixth, seventh round. So those are things that teams are always looking for. And just look at what happened with the Kansas City Chiefs. When you look at, they take Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the first round. Was he starting? No. He wasn't seeing the minutes. They got a guy out of Rutgers, a 7th round pick, who ended up being their cowbell. They're back in the Super Bowl. So that just goes to show you, it don't matter who you think you got. It's about having the best positions, creating depth, and continually recruiting, continually drafting, continuing to get the best people in. And then if injuries happen or attrition happens or contracts happen, you can plug and play.
Now, the thing I've got that goes about this, and look, and again, look, and what happened last year at the running back position? Nick Chubb was just that good. He was. And Jacoby Brissett was that efficient. But I believe we're all in the agreement that Kareem Hunt will not be back next year. I believe we're all in the agreement that Dearness Johnson will not be back here. So that means you're going to go into next season with Nick Chubb. You obviously feel really, really good about that. But between Jerome Ford and Demetric Felton, they had 13 carries. 13 carries in 2022. Demetric Felton, obviously not active very much. Jerome Ford, we wanted to see more of him as a running back. Didn't get that opportunity. I think we were all very pleased the way he contributed as a kickoff return. But even still, I don't think you were confident enough in these two players' abilities based off of 13 carries. And you have one of the best draft analysts in the entire business, and Daniel Jeremiah, telling you, hold your horses. You're all sleeping on this running back class. This is a really, really impressive group. And the difference now, and with guys coming into the NFL as running backs now, as opposed to a few years back, there was, can you do all three phases? How are you as a runner? Can you contribute right away as a receiver? And most importantly, can you be somebody that can step up and pass pro? Because if you can't, I can't put you out there because I can't get my quarterback killed because the 7th round running back couldn't pick up a Mike Blitz, and now my quarterback's dead and I got to play the backup quarterback. It's a deep class. The Browns need playmakers. I'm not saying, and even Demetric Felton, he didn't get much time last year. So we're not sure that there's a spot for him. When you evaluate a draft class, and even if it is maybe not a position of need on your roster, you look and you say, well, this running back group, this running back. And even it doesn't matter if it's a running back group. If it is a deep, deep class at a certain position, you're foolish not to jump in that pool. You don't go to this, well, I need a D-end, so I have to take a D-end. You're not going to take a guy who's 70th on your board over a guy who's 40th on your board because one plays D-end and the other plays running back. The point is to get the best players you possibly can. And for the Browns, they need to assure themselves that they can find a way to score 25, 28, 30 points week in, week out. The defense, you work it out with what you have. You try to figure it out. Super Bowl 38-35. You try to just figure it out. The point is to make sure that you're putting points on the board. If you can't score enough points, it certainly doesn't matter what your defense is able to do. But one play, obviously the Nick Bolton fumble recovery for in the Super Bowl, ultimately kind of made a difference within that game. You've got to draft what is there. And, stop telling me the Browns don't need a running back. They're set at running back. I'm telling you right now, besides Nick Chubb, you have 13 carries in the 2022 season. So don't tell me you don't need more there. Don't tell me you don't need more playmakers. Okay, Jeff, but we want to get Jerry Jeudy. But why do you want to get Jerry? So you want a playmaker. And the other thing is with these guys, and Pacheco, you saw it with him. You see it with the Eagles running backs. You see it with a guy like Jet McKinnon. These guys, yes, you may say they're running backs, but they're pickers. You get the ball in their hands, they make it happen.
Exactly. You get the ball in space, And you can never have enough, man. Just it's up to the coaches to figure out how you go about it and how to get these dudes to touches. But if they show a skill set that they got, you want to use that skill set and you want to do it to the highest level. When you play in a game like football, this ain't basketball. You can't just pencil people in and say this guy's going to be healthy and productive for 17 straight weeks. Bro, come on, man. Like, there's so much that happened between week 1. We just lost Nick Harris last year. First play of the first scrimmage, right? That can happen. It's football. You got guys tearing. Listen, Jakeem Grant, did we even get him? He tore his knee in practice. This is a savage sport, man. I need to get all the best backs I can. And we'll let the rest happen. We'll figure it out on the field or how we want to allocate their resources and their talents. But you hit the nail on the head right there. Stop telling us what we don't need, man. Browns need a bunch of everything, and as long as it come with talent, I'm willing to take it.
Exactly. God forbid we find a guy, who had over a career, 2,000 career yards rushing, 1,000 yards career receiving, 30 touchdowns in college. No, we don't have room for a guy like that but of course you all live in the fallacy world where we want to give Nick Chubb 400 carries a season. But then guess what? You want to do that next year? You're relying on 2 backs who in 2022 combined for 13 carries. He is Garrett Bush, Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, Monday through Friday, 11 to 1 on YouTube. If you saw it today, obviously, Joe in there. As he's making the rounds, and I'll give Joe credit. It's still got the tears flowing. So I mean, you want to talk about a moment, obviously, and there ain't nothing fake about Joe Thomas. So if you didn't get to that, make sure you do. Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, as I said, Monday through Friday, 11 to 1. On-air personality 923 The Fan. The Barbershop Saturday mornings, other appearances. Best way to keep up with all that is make sure you're following at GBush91. Myself, Jeff Lloyd, at Jeff_LJ_Lloyd. Show itself at Locked On Browns. We appreciate you all who make the show your first listen every single day, whether it is for free on your favorite podcast platform, on YouTube. Subscribe, notifications on. When it hits, it's there for you to digest. You can throw some likes on the episodes, help promote for your boys. And Roku, search Locked On Cleveland Sports. You will find us. You will find the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. First day of spring training. So your guards coverage, your Cavs coverage, Danny Green back in town to nail some threes for you boys. We'll see the way that all plays out. So check all of that out. Look, Browns got work to do. But I think the thing is you're all trying to create more work for the Browns to do. They got enough work to do as it is, my friends. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. LGB on ELOB. Let's go Browns.